Welcome to Live and Be Great. I'm your host, Latonya McDonald, and today we're diving into a conversation every parent needs to hear: how to break free from perfectionism, pressure, and parenting on autopilot. If you've ever found yourself saying, I just want to get it right, this episode is for you. Because the truth is, there's no perfect parent, only present ones. My guest today is Todd Sarner, marriage and family therapist and founder of Transformative Parenting. With over 20 years of experience, Todd has helped thousands of high achieving parents move from anxiety and control to calm, connected leadership. He's also the author of The Calm and Connected Parent, which offers practical tools for families navigating emotional overwhelm, sibling conflict, and the chaos of the digital age. So, Todd, I want to start with something so many of my clients and honestly, so many parents I know struggle with: the pressure to get it right. You've worked with countless parents who are doing their best, yet still feel they're falling short. What are some of the biggest myths about what it means to be a good parent, and how do those myths keep families stuck in anxiety and guilt?
Oh, wow. Could you ask a bigger first question? 'Cause I've got about 3 hours of an answer lined up for you. No, I mean, let's just start with basics, and then I really enjoy how you do your show, and it feels really natural and kind of flows, and you could just ask me any follow-up questions, to this. That's just me managing my own anxiety about how much I wanna say. There's nothing in developmental psychology that says you need to be a perfect parent. And I know so many parents that I work with are doing well in life. They're doing well for themselves. They sometimes pretty well and sometimes very, very well. And they don't understand how they can't achieve the same perfection or high achievement with their home life as they do maybe in their professional life. Um, some of the attachment science literature says the most attuned parents, the most securely attached parents kind of miss out or don't do it right or don't do it the way they should like 50, 60% of the time,
Mhm.
And that's kind of crazy when you think about it, but they even count things if they're observing you and your child goes to smile at you and you look away at the same moment because your other child is doing something or just life, right? They'll mark it down on their paper as, oh, that parent just misattuned. They didn't quite do what would have been great. But your child doesn't need perfection. That would not prepare them for life. I'm a big fan of like Buddhist psychology and I studied it in grad school.
Mhm.
And one of the story of the Buddha himself was he lived behind protected walls for most of his youth and didn't see poverty and didn't see death and didn't see suffering. And so when he snuck out when he was like 18 or something and had never seen what life looked like, he was not prepared because he had never seen it. He had never been exposed to it. Everything had been perfect. That's kind of a rough analogy for, like, what perfect parenting would be like. Your child needs you to be trying. They need you to be aware. If you're making the same mistake over and over again, and you notice you're making the same mistake over and over again, and you feel bad, you feel guilty, that's your conscience at first, just saying, "Hey, we wanna do this better," right? And they need you to notice that, and then they need you to try to fix it. And that is actually the path to security. Does that make
Mhm.
sense?
Yes,
The path to
absolutely.
security is not trying to do everything perfect, which is impossible and exhausting. and gets you stuck in these loops of guilt and vicious cycle of I'm not enough and things. In the meantime, your kid's sitting there and you're distracted by trying to be perfect or feeling guilty, and they just need you to be there, right?
Yes, yes,
Which is
yes.
just another Buddhist principle, like be present, be in the moment. So I know that's just the beginning of an answer and we talk more,
Yeah.
but I think healthy attachment is the goal. And healthy attachment is not perfection. Healthy attachment is from the time they're born and they're extremely, extremely anxious because they're not even sure you're going to come back in the room when you leave, to the
Mm,
time you launch them out into the world to go to college or to go make life on their own and be a viable being. They need thousands and thousands of reps of you just trying to be there, of
mm,
when they're feeling too much or not enough or overwhelmed or scared or tired or lonely or that you just try to show up and, hey, you're loved no matter what. Hey,
mm,
you're not too much. Hey, you're enough, right?
mm.
And it's the thousands of reps over time of imperfect trying to be there, correcting when you make a mistake, doing some things right, that leads to a secure human being, and that's our goal.
Okay, I love that attachment, and I know it's difficult for parents who didn't have that, and I think that kicks up the perfectionism because if they had an absent parent or a parent that was emotionally unavailable or detached, oftentimes you're trying to figure out things that you can do to be worthy of their secure love and appreciation and understanding and validation.
Right.
So I do see that oftentimes they project, parents can project like what they needed or
Oh,
think
yeah.
what they needed onto their children. Like, I remember one thing that I said before I got my master's in psychology. I said that I didn't wanna have children yet until I made sure I did everything I wanted to do in my dance career, in my theater career, right? Because I didn't want to resent my children. Like,
Right.
it's crazy that I was thinking that way before even jumping into psychology and seeing all the nuances and places that I myself needed to heal from my childhood. But something in there told me that, okay, this might be inside of me because I saw it within my parents. So, what can I do for myself so I don't repeat that pattern of resentment and trying to live through my own children? And I don't even think they know that that's what it is when they're trying to be the perfect parent and they have this anxiety, that comes about, um, like the reassurance, right?
Right.
And when you reassure your children, you can reassure yourself, but I often think it might be more helpful if you reassure yourself first, and then
Oh,
you can give
totally,
grace to
totally,
others. Like, what do
totally.
you think?
Yeah, like what came up for me, one of my favorite inspirations when I was getting my master's in psych was Carl Jung. I
Okay.
really, really liked his work. And one of my favorite quotes by him, that's not the one that came up when you were talking, was until you make what is unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And I love that. That's a lot of what psychology is to me is like we all have unconscious stuff. We all have stuff we picked up when we were little that, because of how we were raised or what we got or didn't get. And until we make that conscious, until we see it, kind of steers what we're doing in life and we just think it's what it is, right? We just,
Mhm.
oh, this is just how it is. But the thing that came up for me when you're talking, I actually looked it up real quick on my phone so I didn't get it wrong, is he said, the greatest burden for a child is the unlived life of the parent.
Mhm.
And that sounds like what you knew intuitively
Yeah.
yourself. That our unresolved struggles, fears, and passions, things we couldn't pursue as a parent, will be passed on to our kids. So look,
Mhm.
I know parents, I've worked with a couple thousand, I'm a parent. I know that sometimes they'll hear something like what we were just talking about and they'll go, "Oh, well, I didn't do that completely, or I passed on something." Well, guys, that's just kind of life, is we can we can look at it one way or we can look at it the other way. Um, Anything that I am unconscious about, anything that I am holding, like, sometimes I say it's like a backpack. Like, we
Mhm.
have this backpack of stuff our parents gave us or that we got when we were little. Sometimes it was our parents' stuff,
Yeah.
exactly, that they passed
Mhm.
on to us. And our job is to just kinda keep emptying that backpack of all these things that aren't us, right? And you can feel guilty for a minute about anything you did accidentally or unconsciously with your kids. I think the more powerful, maybe more spiritual thing is to think like, what if that's one of the main reasons we're here? What if one of the main purposes, and I know you know this, I've
Mhm.
listened to you. What maybe people always, what is the meaning of life? Why are we here? Maybe one of the things is to realize where we're not fully who we want to be and get on the path to being that, right?
Mhm.
And maybe there is meaning and maybe there is purpose and maybe that is one of the most fulfilling things we can do. Now, different people are burdened with different things growing up. We know this. And some of them are horrible and some of them are horrific. And if you hear somebody saying, well, that's your gift, that might not sound great to you.
Mhm.
But I'm just trying to say, like, hey, it happened. What we got or didn't get happened. And maybe we find meaning in, to me, discovering who my child needed me to be was what helped me grow up. You know? It's what helped me grow up the things that weren't grown up yet, and that's kind of a paraphrase from the man who mentored me, Dr. Neufeld, who wrote the book Hold On to Your Kids, is that if I can discover I didn't get this, but my kid needs it, and my kid doesn't need exactly what I got, but they need this version of it because of who they are. And right, all kids are different, right? So you have 3 kids or something, they
Yep.
don't all need the same thing. But if I figure out, "Oh, this kid needs this, and I'm gonna try to be that to this kid," that inevitably helps you heal and helps you grow. And that doesn't mean your kid's job is to help you grow. It's like your journey as a
Yeah.
parent and you figuring that stuff out is what helps you also. Does that
Yeah.
make sense, Latanya?
Yes, that does make a whole lot of sense. It does help you grow, and I tried something in my recent years from switching to therapy to life coaching. I switched. Everybody, my audience knows I switched because I don't like rules.
I went through the same thing.
I'm come from a culture, me being a black woman, to where unfortunately the medical guys, it's only based off of a cisgender straight white male perspective. So our disorders or illnesses and things of that nature, our trauma, it doesn't always show up the way other people's shows up, right? Sometimes our depression looks like you get up, you go to work, and then you come home and there's kick the dog syndrome, right?
Mhm.
So that's what that anxiety looks like, right? And it's interesting because when we talked about, what is the purpose? What is your purpose? I kind of like to look at, okay, what if there's a contract, right? Soul contract that you signed, and everybody that's a part of your experience is a part of that contract. And then my clients usually say, well, where you going with this? What if you, and I'm like, well, what if you choose your parents? Oh, no, 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 I could never. Well, wait a minute. Wait a minute. What if, you know, they are a part of who you're supposed to become as you are a part of who they're supposed to become? And yes, maybe they supposed to piss you off so you don't want to be nothing like them. Or maybe there's some things that you want to take because we all want to sometimes think as spiritual people want to think that we have our charge, our trauma to heal or our generational curse to break, right? And if you don't break it, then it's passed down from generation to generation. So you're not just carrying your stuff, you're carrying your parents' stuff and so on and so on. Like they talk about Gen Z and how Gen Z doesn't want to work. right?
Yeah.
So there's a part that, well, wait a minute. When I ask those parents about it, I'm like, okay, well, did you come home from your 9 to 5 and complain every day? Well, yeah. So that might be the reason why they don't want to go to work because
Right.
you were hell to deal with, even though you put, food on the table
Right.
and clothes on our back. Like, why would they want to go through that if
Right.
you,
Right.
you know, you
Let's just be an influencer.
Yes, yes, that's the influence. I'm confused as to why you don't think your children are watching you. Yes, when they become a teenager, they are self-absorbed, but they're still watching you. And part
Yeah.
of the reason why it might be so hard for parents during those teenage years is because when you're a teenager, you're sizing your parents up. Let's be honest, you are.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yep.
that's the moment when you say, "I don't wanna be nothing like what you doing right now. I don't wanna be nothing like that." So that's the time where you're no
Absolutely.
longer the superhero. Like, they're trying to rebel against what they don't understand and sometimes what you don't even understand. Like, can you see those patterns when you work with your clients?
Absolutely. I started, we have some similar, parts of our journey. I became a parenting coach before I became licensed as
Mhm.
a therapist, and I just didn't even know if I wanted to be a therapist because of the rules.
Yes.
I I went to a very kind of east-west spiritually oriented graduate school, California Institute of Integral Studies in San Francisco, which also produces people that do very, very well in the testing and all this stuff because it's not like it's not intellectual as well. But I remember going to ethics class and my professor, Professor Fromm, like was on the board of the California licensing board, and he told us stories about people, their clients asking for a hug and hugging the client and then losing your license because the
Mhm.
client thought maybe it was sexual or something. I'm like, I don't need to live in that world. I don't need to live in the world where I have to think about whether I can hug a client or something. So I'm like, I'm just going to be a
Mm.
parenting coach. And then sometime along the way, I decided that I also wanted to work with couples from an
Mhm.
attachment based perspective because I wanted to help them as parents to improve their relationship because that your kids are getting so much of their imprint and their template about relationship from watching yours.
Mhm.
But yeah, the teenage years are about individuation and about figuring out who I am. And if you think about it, it wasn't that long ago. We're in America. It wasn't that long ago in America that when you were 13 years old, you were getting married. It
Mhm.
still happens in parts of the world, right?
Yeah.
But biologically, we're still geared towards when sexuality really erupts and comes up and the hormones and everything when you're 13, 14. That's nature saying, "Hey, it's time to breed. It's time to, have kids and whatever." And that's in us because 100 years ago, 200 years ago, that's what you did, right?
Yeah.
Is you got married and you in cultures all around the world. But so your kids, your teenagers have that drive still that when they become 13, 14, they need to become their own person because it used to mean you wouldn't survive, you wouldn't thrive, you wouldn't do well in life if you weren't ready for it when you were 13,
Mhm.
14, 15, right? So
Right.
your kids have that drive and they also have this drive happening at the same time towards justice, right?
Mhm.
I remember everything for me as a white kid growing up in San Jose, California. I was obsessed with justice and civil rights, and Martin Luther King was my hero, and things like this when I was little, and I saw it. I don't even know if I understood race. I just saw him as an underdog who was fighting for what was right and fighting for
Yeah.
justice. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, I see that in my clients. A lot of my clients, when they see their kids starting to individuate and say, I want to do it my way and stuff, a lot of my clients who are doing well for themselves, they kind of back off and go, okay, I guess we're
Mhm.
done. You know, I
Yeah.
guess you just do your thing now. Right. And that's
Mhm.
not what your teenager needs either. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Is your teenager needs you kind of more than ever. They just need you
Mhm.
to relate to them differently. You
Mm.
know? They need you not to act like they're 5 anymore. They need you to give them some space to make some decisions and to figure out who they are, you know? It's
Yeah.
called, in science I didn't learn this in grad school, I learned it after, I don't know if you ever heard of it, but the orthogenetic principle.
Re
And the orthogenetic principle is
Mhm,
this thing that exists, like, in cellular biology,
mhm,
but to me, it exists in all growth, and I see it in spiritual traditions as well, that the first stage of relationship is merger, right? So think about
okay.
falling in love or the
Mhm,
way a parent and a child are when the child is very young. There's not
mhm,
a lot of separation of you and me, right?
mm,
When you get together with somebody or when your kid's really young, there's just us. You know what I mean?
mhm. Yeah.
And I'm not trying to be different. I'm trying to be like you. But
Mhm.
then the second stage of growth is individuation or separation. I have to figure out who I am. I have
Right.
to figure out, like, what do I think compared to what you think? I need to figure
Mhm.
that out. And that's the teenage years, you know? But then there's a third phase in relationship, which is integration, which is I can figure out in a healthy way, I can be me, you can be you, and we can be an us. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's
Yes.
not this, we can't be separate, and it's not this, we have to be separate radically. It's this, like, space where it's like, if you and I are best friends, Latanya, it's I don't have to think everything the same as you. I don't have to agree with you on everything. I can let you be you, and you'll let me be me, but we also have this sense of who we are as friends, right?
Right.
And that
Mhm,
could be you and your child, and that can be you and your partner. That's
mhm,
healthy boundaries to me, you know? But it doesn't happen without that process, you know what I mean?
mhm.
It doesn't happen with maybe we merge at first, and then maybe we figure out how to be a little bit more individual, and then we figure out how to, like, relate to each other in a more healthy way.
Yes, yes, a more healthy way. A more healthy way. It's very, very helpful, especially seeing the leadership dynamics in which child feels like they have to have to live up to all the parents' expectations. And then
Yeah.
you might have a child that wants to rebel against all of it
Oh, yeah. Well,
that
yeah,
some of
the
our
trick of
parents
it
went.
is yeah,
Mhm,
like, when they're teenagers and stuff, but kids go through this at other phases too. The trick is keep that attachment, keep that
mhm.
sense of connection. The whole world runs on that, right?
Yes.
Cultures all around the world do this better than America, right?
Mhm.
And I'm not trying to bag on America, I'm just you go anywhere in the
Yeah.
world, and people will have a whole ritual of spending a few minutes getting connected before anything else. Everywhere, right?
Mhm. Yes.
I went to France when I was, like, 19 years old, like, right after high school, and
Mhm.
everybody told me the French are rude, the French are rude, they're really rude, and I read this book called Cultural Misunderstandings, and, they said, "Look, what's going on for the French people is they don't want to go straight to business. If you walk into a shop to get a croissant, you're not supposed to go, "Hi, can I have a croissant?" They consider you rude because you didn't take time to say hello.
Yeah.
You didn't take time to relate, right? And so if you don't do that, they think you're rude and they're just reacting to that, right? But you look at Africa, you look at Central and South America, you look at Tibet, people sitting down and having a cup of tea before anything else, or spending 5 minutes doing, like, a certain hug first and then talking about small talk. But people don't do that with their kids sometimes, or they don't do it with their teen, you know?
Right.
Your teen still needs you to relate to them. Your child still needs you to connect first. But when they're teenagers or when they're in times of life where they're trying to feel out who they are a little bit more, they
Yeah.
just also need you to give them a little space to figure out what they think. And the truth is if you have a good relationship with your loved one, and if you have good values yourself and you're trying yourself to have good values, you'll find that your child usually comes back to them,
Yes.
right? They
Mhm.
just need to find the way to them themselves because they won't be as meaningful if they don't come to them themselves. That makes sense too?
Yes,
Because
it
if I'm
does.
just copying what you do because you do it, that's not really coming from in me, you know? I need
Yes.
to kind of figure it out. So I hope I answered your question in there
No, you
somewhere.
did. You
You're
did.
asking
You
good
did.
ones that make me think of like 5 different things at once.
It's okay. I'm an ADHD person, so this is a safe space for you. Trust
Nice,
and believe,
nice.
okay? I'm over in Timbuktu somewhere off of one word. That's just how I am, right? That's
That's
the
all right.
warning. But but I definitely understand. Um and the differences I do remember having to tell parents because it's interesting when I was doing my internships, my practicum hours. Practicum for therapists for those who don't know, it's kind of like doing like a residency where they put
Mhm.
you in the field and you have a supervisor, right? So my supervisors would call me in to work with the parents uh after a while because I cracked the code and I would explain it to the teenagers that were having struggles understanding their parent. One of the first things I would say is, when your mom or your dad gets upset, what does it look like? Does it look like an adult or a child?
Mhm.
And they
Right.
giggle and they're like, it looks like a child. I'm like,
Exactly.
oh, okay. I said, that's who's raising you right now, right?
In that
There's some
moment, yeah.
unhealed trauma there. There is Right now, you see a little boy or a little girl that is screaming for attention, and until somebody acknowledges that little boy, that little girl, they're gonna tear everything up,
Yep,
right? It's not a fully developed, fully understanding of their own stuff parent right now. They're just going through the motions. So it's
yep,
nothing against you. You're not a bad person. You're not unworthy. It's just they can't hear you right now until somebody cracks that, right? So I
yep.
say, bring them in and let me talk to them. And as soon as I say, tell me about your childhood,
Mm.
there go the tears.
Yeah,
And all of a
yeah.
sudden, they can now relate to their child, right?
Mhm.
Well, I used to like girls back in the day too, but
Yep.
and they're like, child is like, what? Like you
Exactly.
told me I couldn't even go to sleepovers anymore. Like once you find out I like girls too, like it's that connection. Like they somehow, because they may have been raised with the parent feeling like, okay, I'm the parent now. There's like
Yep,
a disconnect. Like, they
yep,
kinda forget what it was like to be a child or to be a teenager or to find some sort of relation. Even when I'm able to now combine, like, the astrology and things of that nature, when somebody tells me what their sign is, it's like I instantly know what their childhood was like based off of their behavior. If they're, for instance, the ones I like to talk about the most is the parentified child. Usually
yeah,
the Virgos, hands down. If you see a Virgo, they anxious, right? And they're taking care of the whole entire family. That's
yep,
usually what it is. They're
yep.
usually the parent. When you see them and the way they move and the way they take care of everything, that's the anxiety.
How about
Mhm.
how about a double Leo?
Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. Woo! Are you a double Leo?
I am a double Leo, oldest child of 3, so,
Oh,
you could do a whole thing on that.
absolutely. Todd, let me tell you guys right now before he says it, and it's probably in the book. But and Todd had emotionally unavailable parents. Period. Okay. He
Mhm.
Yeah. So when he started with we started with that attachment. No, 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 no. Secure attachment.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, no, I remember, I went to CIIS, which again had a
Mhm.
great intellectual tradition, but it only made sense to me. I mean, psychology the path to psychology to me went through learning about Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey
Mhm.
and Thich Nhat Hanh and Buddhism, and things like that. And
Mhm.
so the fact that our spiritual understandings and who we think we are
Mhm.
when it comes to death and when it comes to the universe and connectedness and stuff, that only made sense to me that that had a impact on our psychology, right? It only made sense to me. And I had great experiences. Like we had a cosmology and consciousness program at school that I would take electives in. But a woman at our school who ran the bookstore also happened to be good friends with Eckhart Tolle, and she also was an astrologist, and she would
Yeah.
do charts and stuff, and, she actually transcribed Eckhart Tolle's, books. His books were actually talks that he did that, she transcribed and edited, so I got to see him in the early days before he was a big rock star author and, but also get my chart done, and, oh boy, did I hear the, stuff about being a double Leo.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I guess I guess when clients ask me about
Mhm.
spiritual things, I often just say, "Hey, that's above my pay grade."
Mhm.
Like, that's I'm definitely informed by
Yeah.
spiritual ideas, but I
Mhm.
stick in my lane
Yeah.
a little bit more. But it makes sense to me. And even the top physicists in the world are saying time and space are an illusion, and that
Mhm.
maybe consciousness is what is the fabric of
Mhm.
everything.
Yeah.
And I know people start hearing the language, even your audience, and it starts sounding a little woo, like, what does that mean? But if consciousness is the fabric of everything and everything is actually interconnected, then it kind of makes sense to me what you said before, and that
Mhm.
different spiritual traditions have been saying forever, that maybe we do in some way choose, hey, I'm going to have a human experience again. Maybe this time I wanna learn this, and maybe this
Yes.
time I wanna, like, figure this out a little bit better, right?
Mhm.
Even if that means in the relative scheme of everything, a very short blip of time of 50, 60, 70, 80 years on Earth, but maybe this is what I wanna get better at. Maybe this is what
Yeah.
I want to experience, and whether you take that literally or you take that metaphorically, however you relate to it, I think what's so important for parents and humans is to have the right narrative, right?
Yes.
Because if you have a narrative that says life sucks and life is suffering and it's pain, you're going to come at it one way.
Mhm.
If you think, okay, this is what I've been dealt and this is what has occurred, what can I do to become a more full, expression of my potential despite that? Then it
Mhm.
becomes meaning, then it becomes
Yes.
purpose. And to me, parenting has all sorts of psychological and emotional aspects, but it also has maybe a spiritual aspect that
Mhm.
this is how you become more present. This is how you heal. This is how, and again, your parentified child, that
Mhm.
is one of the most common things I see, Virgo or not,
Yeah.
is in attachment. We talk about that there's an
Mhm.
attachment hierarchy, and
Mhm.
people can hear this the wrong way, but we are not meant to be best friends to our children. We are
Mhm.
not meant to be equals in the way we think about it. We
Mhm.
love them, we cherish them, we're informed by what they need, but we are meant to be in what we call the alpha position, which is not a dictator. It's a benevolent leader. It is a leader. It's my job is not to make you happy. My job is to take care of you. My job is to
Mhm.
make sure you get the nourishment physically, emotionally, psychologically that you need to thrive in life. Like,
Yes.
that's my job. I hope you're happy. That would be great. I try
Mhm.
to be empathetic. I don't believe in punishment. Punishment's not
Mhm.
effective, let
Mhm.
alone moral. But
Yeah.
I'm going to set limits and I am going to teach you right and wrong because that's what you need and it helps you
Mhm.
feel secure, right? But that all leads me back to what you said about parentified
Mhm.
children. Children, when parents, I'm sorry, are not in that position, when they're
Yeah.
not in the alpha position, when they're not what I call a mama bear or a papa
Mhm.
bear, they're
Mhm.
not like that kind of vibe, then the more sensitive kids are going to feel so insecure by you not being in that leadership position that they're going to take that position themselves. They're
Yes.
going to start bossing you around. They're going to start telling you what to do. And then you might start
Mhm.
thinking, oh, my kid's a boss or my kid is confident. Well, that's not usually true. Okay.
Mhm.
Like, don't get me wrong. I'm not here to step on kids, suppress kids for their spirit, and God bless
Mhm.
a boss,
Yeah, yeah.
especially in the way Beyonce was talking about it
Mhm.
for a few years there.
Mhm.
But usually what it is I don't like I had a kid, I don't know what to call him. He's still in my life. He's a hip hop artist and he
Mhm.
also works with kids like himself. I met him
Mhm.
in a group home when I was a line staff in my practicum when I was younger, and he used to boss the line staff around. He used to
Mhm.
like, and a lot of them were big football players that they
Mhm.
recruited just because these were big teenage kids that were level 14 in California, which means they were just this far away from being incarcerated.
Mhm.
This kid was a big African American kid. He's like
Mhm.
6 foot, like at 15 years old,
Mhm.
you know, and he used to just start bossing people around.
Mhm.
And he used to ask me to sit with him when he wanted to go to sleep sometime. If we had extra like line worker, he
Mhm.
would like, he had like mental disturbances sometimes. And I would sit
Mhm.
with him and just talk with him. And I said, I'll call him Bobby because I
Mhm.
said, Bobby, I got to tell you, man, like you're bossing people around and it is not working out for you. Like these people don't respond to that well.
Mhm.
They think they need to be in charge. They need to be dictators. It's not working out for you.
Mhm.
And I'm like, "Why do you do it?" And he said, "Todd, sometimes I feel like I'm in the back seat of a car and it's going fast down the hill and nobody's
Mhm.
driving. And
Mhm.
if I feel like nobody's driving, I get behind the wheel." I just thought, "Oh my god, that is so profound for a
Mhm.
15-year-old kid
Mhm.
to be able to
Mhm.
describe that feeling," right?
Yeah.
But that's just one way of looking at this parentified child thing sometimes is
Mhm.
if your kid is insecure and they're sensitive and they don't feel like you're large and in charge in the right way, they will start being large and in charge, and that's not what they need. You know what I mean? And
Yes.
so people will come to me and they'll be that way in their relationships or they'll, it's not working out in their life and it's
Mhm.
because they had to learn to be in that position when they were little. So, kids need a good, calm, present leader and
Mhm.
not going back to the beginning, one who is perfect. They just
Right.
need you to kind of have the attitude of, I got you and I'm your answer. And I am not perfect, but I'm still the best you got. And I'm just going to keep going and I'm going to stay out ahead of you. And I'm going to try to think in my head when something comes up, what is it in this moment to take care of my child? Not what do
Mhm.
they want, not what does my programming or my backpack or my parents' voices tell me to do. What in this moment would actually take care of you? And that's what my work is usually designed around, like help parents get in that state, get in that
Yes.
alpha state of not perfect,
Leadership.
but
Yeah.
I'm your answer, you know?
And this is perfect because I was thinking before you went into it that that's one of the things that Todd talks about in his book is the alpha leadership, being confident in your home rather than, swinging between control and being permissive. And, out there, gentle parenting is getting a bad rap. And I think people misconstrue it as a hands-off parenting, like, there's no
Yeah.
rules,
No. And that's just
there's
not
no
true.
pushback, and it's not true. We're saying stop, you know, beating your kids and learn some
Yeah.
emotional regulation, because if you
Yeah.
can't regulate, because that to get that angry to want to inflict pain onto someone, or especially someone you're training not to hit you back, right? Like, that is a disconnect. You know how when they tell kindergarteners don't hit, use your words. It's the same thing. Like, you have to find a better way that challenges their mind versus I'm going to just let out my anger because my anger, but I'm not taking the time to truly process my emotions. How can you expect your children to do the same? Like, you're going to be looking in a mirror when you get to that point and you wanna ask, "Okay, well, where did they get this from?" You. It's you
Yeah. No,
who they got it from.
you bring up so
Mhm.
many good points there, and just to try to touch quickly on them, like, here's good news, bad news, everyone, and you know this from your training, Latanya, like, when you are deeply attached to somebody, whether it's your spouse, your husband, your wife, your spouse, or your child, your nervous systems are wired together, okay? It's really hard to explain how this occurs, but a trained person in this knows because, like,
Mm.
um, I'll be doing couples counseling, and one of them will yawn, and the other one will yawn within 2 seconds, right?
Mhm.
That is an indication that your nervous systems are wired together. Best friends do that too, you know?
Yep.
Um, One of them will have a fight or flight reaction, and the other one's not even looking at them, but they feel it and they turn their head like, "What?" Right? That's how your kids are too. So the good news is you have more power to regulate your kid than anyone else, but you
Yes.
also have more power to dysregulate your kids than anyone else. If you
Mhm.
come into the room like a live wire and you are not taking care of yourself, you have not put on your oxygen mask, you're not doing what you need to do to take care of you, your kid automatically is going to get the feeling like something's not safe here, right? And they're going to feel it, and it's true with your partner too. It's why couples fight so hard sometimes is
Yes.
they're not having a rational brain and heart to heart brain connection. They're having a nervous system
Exactly.
cascade, right? And
Mhm.
so lesson number 1 there is why I call it calm and connected parent. You being calm and grounded is most of the game,
Mhm.
okay? I can tell you to do this perfect 3-step process, and if you are lit, if you are, like, in your fight or flight, you can't do it. You could say the exact words and it won't
Mhm.
work. But if you are calm and you are grounded, not perfectly, but working on it, the same words will work perfectly, but the difference is your state. And telling a 5-year-old, for instance, to calm down and use your words when you can't even do it, right?
Right.
And, the 5-year-old doesn't even have the part of their brain, the
Mhm.
prefrontal cortex, the frontal lobe, that doesn't exist until you're like 7 years old. It tends
Mm.
to show up a little earlier in little girls, right? But if they are mad, they are mad. They cannot use their words. They do not have the angel on their shoulder. They only have the devil on their shoulder in those moments. You know what I mean? So expecting them to regulate and calm down when you can't even do it. Like I say to my men, like in couples counseling, I said, telling a woman to calm down has never worked in the history of ever. Will you stop doing it? Right? Women do it to men too, right?
Yes. Mhm.
But they don't need you to tell them to calm down. They need you to help them calm down. And you having a regulated nervous system is how you can do that, right?
Right.
But also going back to the Buddha and Buddhist psychology, one of the most famous things in Buddhism, and I'm trying to address that pendulum that you're talking about. I've been doing this 25 years.
Mhm.
Every couple years, it's gentle parenting or
Yeah.
helicopter parenting or this parenting, and it's all gentle. And then when that doesn't work, everyone swings to the other side
Yep.
and it becomes F
Mhm.
around and find out parenting, which
Yes.
is huge on TikTok and stuff right now and Instagram.
Mhm.
It's the middle path, guys.
Yeah.
Gentle parenting does not mean don't set boundaries.
Right.
Okay? Like, how
Mhm.
do you feel as an adult if
Mhm.
someone in your life has no boundaries? How do you feel if someone at work or one of your friends has like no boundaries? Does that feel safe to you? Do you trust that person to give secrets? You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
gentle parenting is meant to be just like attachment parenting is meant to be. Hey, look, connection between people comes first. If you don't know I care, you don't care what I know. I
Yep.
need to make sure that I am keeping that fire lit of us and our relationship first. That comes
Mhm.
first. And yeah, punishing, yelling, harshness, like you said, is not helpful. It doesn't
Mhm.
work. It's not productive. It doesn't feel good. It leads to guilt. So, hey, if gentle parenting is like, hey, let's not do that, I'm all with you. But attachment science says that kids also need to know when you do this, this happens. When you don't do this,
Yes.
this doesn't happen. If your
Yes.
kid doesn't have that when they go off into the world, they are going to learn, but they're going to
Mhm.
learn the hard way. They're gonna
Mhm.
learn by making big mistakes, okay?
Right.
I need to teach them if you're yelling in the car, we pull over the car. I'm not gonna yell at you, but I am gonna pull it over, and guess what? We just lost some time in the park because I had to sit there on the side of the road with you. That is not punishing you, that's just what happened because we had to
Mhm.
spend that time, right? That's not
Yes.
punishment. But also, and you referred to this earlier, I forget exactly what you said, kids need to cry. Kids need to get their emotions out. They need to
Yes.
process them. You were talking and it made me think of Good Will
Mhm.
Hunting, with
Mhm.
Robin Williams
Yes,
and
yes,
Matt
yes.
Damon. That
Mhm,
was
mhm.
one of the most brilliant scenes. Go look it up on YouTube, guys, if you don't know what I'm talking
Yes,
about. It's
please
been
do.
downloaded, like, millions of times. Matt
Mhm.
Damon was angry.
Yep.
He, was hitting people. He got put into therapy because he was so angry, but he was a genius, but he wasn't living his potential because he was mad.
Mhm.
Robin Williams got his trust. He challenged him, he told him
Yep.
his, like, gave limits to him and stuff. And at the end, he just was like confronting him with his abuse history because he knew he needed to feel it. He needed to
Mhm.
process it, right? And he just kept saying, "It's not your fault. It's not your fault. It's not your fault." And Matt Damon went like anger and like upset, but then he cried and he got it
Yeah.
out. Like that's a big example to make this point, but your kids
Yes.
need that too. And if your
Mhm.
version of gentle parenting means not saying no to your kid, you are not helping them to feel their feelings and process
Right.
them, which you do by being firm and saying no, but also being compassionate. Those are not opposing values, right?
Mhm.
Barack Obama, no, Clinton said that once. He said,
Mhm.
strength and compassion are not opposing values, right? And
Yeah.
that's so obvious. But going back to the Buddha, he
Mhm.
said, when the guitar string is too tight, it wasn't a guitar, but same thing. When it's too tight, it breaks. When it's too loose, it doesn't make a note. It's about
Mhm.
that middle, right? And that's
Yes.
what parenting is meant to be. We
Mhm.
lead with attachment, we lead with connection. That's why I call it attachment first parenting. But we
Mhm.
also balance it out with doing consequences the right way and setting limits the right way. I don't let kids get away with it. That's not helpful to them. The second they go
Mhm.
off into the world, like I said, that's not going to go well. They need to kind of be able to feel their feelings and stuff. So I know there was a lot in that answer, but you asked great questions. So
I know. Thank you. And you know what? Sidebar, I am so proud of Todd for being a double Leo, okay? And really, really, really help listen, I don't think y'all understand how much it takes a double Leo to tame that fire and not just burn everything up, okay? So, Todd has clearly done the work.
I went to a grad school where you couldn't avoid the work.
Yes, yes, same.
They
Mhm.
kind of insisted upon it. We
Mhm.
did 5-hour process trainings every week in my practicum, so it was hard sometimes, but yeah, we got to do the work. And whether you started it, you know, I don't want to say how many years ago, as it ages me, or if you start it today, right? Start
Yes,
it, begin it,
yes.
walk in the just I tell parents all the time, just walk in the direction. That's all. Walk in the direction that you know is right. Walk in the direction that you know is where you want to be, who you want to be. Just keep going that way. And as long as you're going that way, you're going to be okay. It's not ever going to be perfect, but just walk. Okay, I notice this pattern keeps coming up. Do something about it. And that's empowering when you get that. And it's part of why I wanted to be on your podcast is I know you're all about, you know, all of these things.
Yes, all about these things and telling the truth and being honest. Even if it's uncomfortable, like I don't mind that part of it being uncomfortable. That's my actually my favorite part is the uncomfortable part because then we see the vulnerability, then we see the truth, right? And I love the alpha leadership concept in Todd's book because it doesn't tell you that just because we're saying parent with more consciousness, not to parent at all, right? Like you still are the leader, you still are in charge. No, you're not the best friend because the best friend gets ran over. Like we all know that. They get ran over. And the parent that is too strict, like, "Hey, I don't understand why you don't have an A. I shouldn't have to help you. I got A's, you should have A's," and not really there emotionally. Like, I love the fact that Todd emphasizes, yes, food, stability, but that emotional part, like, he doesn't leave out the emotional needs of your children. And I want people to think about, you know, when it comes to emotional regulation in parents, that think of them as like a thermostat of the home. And when we ground ourselves, our children's nervous system learns safety. And I always remind parents calm is contagious, like Todd was talking about earlier with the yawning and things of that nature. Your presence is more powerful than your perfection. Okay. And, let's segue into this next thing that I wanted to ask Todd and discuss is that we are raising kids in a digital age. Okay, we have iPad kids. We do, we do. And you're more distracted than ever. So, how do screens and social media impact attachment and connection? And what can parents do to protect those emotional bonds, Todd?
Yeah. For a long time, I've tried to stay in a non-judge I try to live life non-judgmentally, right? If
Mhm,
I see somebody abusing somebody, yeah, I'm gonna call that out. But in general, I'm like, judgment doesn't tend to help. And I've tried to stay in a non-preachy place about
mhm,
technology. My kid
mhm,
went to a Waldorf school, and they had an agreement that we're just not gonna do technology, and they're not even gonna have smartphones until at least 8th grade, and I appreciated that because
mhm,
guess what they did? They played.
mm,
They were outside. They didn't
mhm.
complain about it. My kid didn't complain about not having a smartphone because his friends didn't have them. You know what I mean?
Right, 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 right.
But I also saw people being so preachy and up on a soapbox about it that just
Mhm,
never appealed to me, and
mhm,
I'm like, "Look, sometime I was raised by a single mom, like, I know how hard it is to parent sometimes, and maybe if you put your kid in front of the screen, maybe you get a break." I get all that, right? And what's been hard for me is just, like, seeing the skyrocketing rates of anxiety and depression and self-harm. Jonathan Haidt had his best-selling book last year, The Anxious Generation, that really outlined it. And it's so hard, like, finding the right middle path to walk with this, right? Like, not making people feel bad. So anything I say, please understand, I get it, and everyone around you is doing it. So I'm not coming from that place. But what I think about is, A, how does technology, social media, and now AI affect your ability to connect with your kid, right?
mhm,
And
mhm,
is it not affecting it? Okay, fine. But if it is, you need to pay attention to that, right? Because, if kids are like, oh, it's easier just to try to connect on. I used to work with kids in group homes when MySpace came out, right?
mhm,
And all of a sudden these kids, inner city kids were just like, I want to go to the library. And they didn't even have a library like where they came from, like sometimes. And they're like, I want to go to the library. I'm like, oh, these kids want to go to the library. That's great. But they wanted to go to the library because they wanted to go on MySpace on the computer because they had this like
mhm,
feeling like they had 600 friends. You know what I mean?
yes,
And they
mhm,
didn't have 600 friends. They just had the illusion of having friends. And it was easier to do that than
mhm.
trying to relate to a human being like you and I are right now, right?
Yes,
That's
yes, yes.
that's tough.
Mhm,
Like you and I could disagree. You could tell me you don't agree with what I'm saying. You could, right?
mhm,
That's
mhm.
always there when you're talking to another person. Or
Right.
again, you could be like my best friend. I could be, hey, Latanya, I want to hang out with you. And you could be like, nah, Todd, I don't want to hang out with you. And that, how would that feel, right? So it's
Mhm,
easier to go on the screens. Now I'm getting calls from parents that are discovering that their kids are going to ChatGPT for advice and like
mhm.
on really intimate things. And like,
Yeah.
and then we hear news stories like a month ago, like a kid committed suicide and he was in
Mhm,
dialogue with ChatGPT and ChatGPT was
mhm.
like, go ahead, do it. Right.
Right, right, right.
And now that's an extreme that
Mhm,
doesn't represent everything that's happening, but it's usually like a tip of the iceberg that tells you something's coming here, right? And it's gonna be younger and younger kids. So all I would say is please understand that, 1, technologies can be a distraction from the harder work of human interaction. You talked about it a minute ago, Latanya, and I could go on for an hour about what you said, but there's peace and there's conflict. And a lot of times people are trying to avoid conflict because they think it's peace or conflict, right?
mm.
But there's something in between, and you
Yep.
were referring to it, and what I call it is tension, you know?
Mhm,
Is there's a spot where maybe we don't get along. Maybe we're disagreeing. Maybe this is something that's uncomfortable for me. And that zone of discomfort and tension is where all growth happens, right? I can't grow without coming up against something that's tense because I don't know how to do it or it's outside of my belief system or something, right? That is necessary for growth. That is necessary for resilience. And if I'm avoiding that by using technology and avoiding human interaction, I'm not getting that, right? And then after that, there's all these capabilities and maturities that I need to develop as a human being. Like I need to be able to weigh out things and different opinions and how I
Mhm.
agree or don't agree. I need to like figure out what to do with when I'm bored or I don't have stimulation. I need to be creative. I need to go through that goodwill hunting process of feeling my feelings and learning to process my emotions. And what I just say to parents is it's like we're cutting off all of those processes by putting our kids in front of screens too much. Does that make
Yes.
sense?
Yes, yes, yes.
So if your kid is like strong in their connections, they will come to
Mhm,
you first. If your
mhm,
kid is creative, if they're able to feel their feelings, well, then
mhm.
maybe they will use technology for good. They will
Yes.
use technology to figure out how they can make better connections and they can do
Mhm,
good things and they can be creative. But if your kid doesn't have all those things yet, they're going to go to technology as a substitute,
mhm.
right? Like, I don't learn how to deal with tension and process things if all I need to do is hit reset on the video game
Yep.
or, like, block a person or whatever, right? I
Mhm.
don't go through that. So I hope that it's such a big, big answer. I do training on this, like, for a couple hours. That's what my concern is about technology right now, is it's
Yes.
like having dessert before we have dinner. Your kids
Mhm.
need a full belly of connection and these growing processes and these things that they can do that they're creative and they're resilient and adaptive. And unfortunately, technology can get in the way of that. So parenting was already hard. Raising a
Yes.
child who thrives in life was already hard. But if we are kind of turning them over to peer culture and we're turning them over to technology, it
Mhm.
does have implications for how they grow. So I try not to be up on a soapbox about it, but I just try to inform parents, give you the information, and you're the parent. Make a decision based on what you know. But so
Mhm.
often we make decisions on not knowing and just what everybody else is doing. And that's
Yes.
what I hear from parents all the time. I wish my kid wasn't addicted to technology, but everybody else was doing it, so we did it, you know?
Exactly.
Decide what's right for you, decide what's in alignment with your values, and
Mhm.
then have the courage of those convictions and find other people because I guarantee you, you have people in your life who also feel like you do and who kind of have an instinct that you want your kids playing and having more downtime and not being on it as much. And if you just find a small village of those people, you can kind of, help support each other, you know?
Yes. I love that. I love that. And it's so important. I often encourage families to create spaces where times and there's a time and a place for the devices, right? Like you can like get some hope because it's messing with you too. Like a lot of people's memory are getting worse. Like
Oh,
Google
yeah.
already, being able to Google everything was already a thing.
Right.
But
Being
when you
able to
can't even
figure out
remember,
answers. Like
yeah,
your brain doesn't know how to figure out answers as much when you're just given
exactly.
answers,
When you're
you know?
just giving answers and it's people the GPS, right? People don't re if their phone is dying and they're in the car, you can't remember how to get home. If you drive the same route every day,
I
you
don't even
should.
understand. I grew up without phones, right? I grew up in Silicon Valley, right? Like
Yeah.
technology center.
Mhm.
I I I don't even remember, like, did we all get maps? Like, were we all, like, pulling out maps? And, like, you used to
Yeah.
have to call a place all the time and, like, "How do I get to your place?" Right? And people had to tell you over
Mhm.
and over again on the phone. Like, I
Yep.
don't know what I'd do if my Google Maps stopped
Right,
working. I have
all
no
of
idea.
that. Yeah, so it's gonna take some effort and some training, right, when it comes to parenting in a digital age, but also trying to make sure your mental is together in a digital age. You don't even have to memorize numbers any longer, like, you just don't. So that has an effect on your brain, okay? Dementia is that people are showing signs of dementia even earlier now, okay? Your children, they can't even tell people they're going the wrong way if they get in the car with somebody else that you might have had them drop them off to practice or whatever the case may be, because 'cause they're not paying attention to where they're you usually have to have back in the day, you had to pay attention to landmarks, right?
Oh, yeah.
You had to pay attention to how many traffic lights you passed
First
and
street
things of
after
that
the
nature.
barn, the big red barn on the left,
Yes,
okay?
all of that, all of that. We're not doing that any longer. So, what if you decided, okay, during Sunday dinners or, first thing in the morning, we're gonna do whatever we need to do to make sure devices aren't present. Or maybe soon as you get off of work and you see your kids during dinner time, no devices. You too. You gotta do it too now as a parent, okay? Do it
I
too, because
see it.
it is going to help you as well, you
Yeah,
know?
there's a famous article that I think was in the New York Times is, after Steve Jobs from Apple introduced the iPad,
Mhm.
guess where his kids went to school? His kids went to school at a Waldorf school in
Mm,
Silicon Valley, where a lot of the tech people were sending their kids, and guess how many times his kids used an iPad?
mm,
0. What's that tell you, right? His
mhm.
kids didn't use iPads, right? I totally agree with what you're saying, and I just I see consequences and I see
Mhm.
technology in the same bucket a little bit. We have things we do as a family, and when you and I just mean we, general all
Yeah,
of us,
yeah.
right? Your
Mhm.
like, and decide what that is, parent. Like, we spend time together at the dinner table, quality time, which, believe it or not, your kids actually really value that if you do it right. Just like
Mhm.
kids actually value doing board games with their parents, even if they're teenagers, if it's just part of your culture, they would do that.
Yes.
It's when you leave an emptiness, it gets filled with technology. But I kind of see it as like screens are almost always optional.
Yes.
And just the culture of our home is we do what we have to do before
Mhm.
we do the optional things, right? We have quality time together. We talk, we actually connect because we just need that. If we don't do that, just like that French example I said, we're not going to get along. So I actually want to hear how your day went. I want to hear what everyone's doing. I want to connect. Hey, you have homework? Okay, now do that. Hey, is there things you need to do to help spot around the house, pick up your room, do this thing, do your chores? Okay, that's also what we do first.
Yes.
Hey, do we have extra time? Okay. There's that extra half hour. Go ahead, use your screen. But it's more supposed to be that. It's more
Mhm.
supposed to be we do what we're supposed to do, what we need to do, and that's not a burden. That's just what we do. This is what
Yes.
we do, and then we do what's optional. And
Mhm.
technology, I think, is supposed to take that part, right?
Yes.
I make sure you have a healthy belly and a heart of love and connection and food. And then, oh, do we have a little extra time? Oh, now let's use this technology to
Mhm.
further our goals and further our creativity because it can be amazing for that. I can't even believe the things you can do with AI. I grew up in Silicon Valley. I was on a documentary about kids using computers when I was like
Mhm.
13, right? I wasn't
Mhm.
that good at computers. But even I am sitting here every single day going, ChatGPT does what now? I can create a slide deck of a presentation with, like, typing a paragraph. Are you kidding me right now? I used to spend, like, weeks on that. It can be amazing, but we need our kids to be grounded in connection, and we need them to have good functioning brains and hearts. And if they are grounded in connection and they have good functioning brains and hearts, awesome,
Yes.
awesome. Let's just make sure we don't put the cart before the horse. Let's just make sure that those things are there first, and then let's let them use them as tools where they can change the world, you know?
Exactly. Then let us use them. If you can't be on there, if you can't monitor your kids, you probably need to rethink doing things that just because they're common, that they're going to work for you. Like be realistic with your situation and what works for you. Okay. If you're a person that works 50, 80 hours a week, maybe. Okay, there might need to be some more restrictions that are trained, and if you train the earlier you train them, the better. Okay, when it comes to their dependence on technology, the earlier, even if you need to get your kid a phone that doesn't have the internet, parents are doing that now.
My kid had yeah, that's yeah, my kid didn't have a
'Cause
smartphone
they
first.
know their children, okay?
Look, we're
So
yeah, we didn't even talk about it, and I know we're running out of time, but, like,
Mhm.
it's an addiction like anything else. It's a
Yep.
dopamine addiction, and one of the biggest problems we have in our culture right now for adults and kids is dopamine addiction.
Yes.
Like, if I'm just getting a dopamine hit from being on technology and the algorithm and what the algorithm is bringing up for me, then regular human interaction or being out in nature is boring to me,
Mhm.
right? I kinda think of
Yes.
it as like sugar, like, I have a problem with sugar sometimes. I
Mhm.
love sugar, and
Yep.
if I'm eating it, I want it. I want it. I want it. If I'm not eating it, I don't want it at all. Other people have experienced that. Like when you cut out sugar, you actually notice, oh, I don't really want it. But it's like drugs and stuff, dopamine hit. People do cocaine and then their brain expects this level of stimulation. And if I don't get this
Exactly.
level of stimulation, I'm like I hurt, right? And you're raising that endorphin dopamine bar. Technology does that too. It kind of raises that bar. I went into my favorite beer pub here in town months ago, and I'm not saying I'm above it, Latanya, I do it, but every single person at the bar was on their phone. I'm like, "Why did we come out here to spend more
Yep.
money on a beer or something, that I could have at home just to be on my phone?" And it's because, it's easier than turning to the person next to you and, "Hey, what's up?" "Who are
Mhm.
you? What's going on?" So anyway, I went off on another tangent,
It's
but
okay. Listen,
I tend to do that.
I have that effect on people.
You
I
do.
specifically have that effect on Leos. I was raised by one, okay? Specifically with Leos, me and Leos, listen, they'll comment under this post, everyone that I know, all of my Leo besties, on the phone for hours, okay?
And I'll leave you on this note. My son's mother,
Mhm.
Leo, my son, Leo, right?
Wow.
So there's a whole bunch of my son is July 3rd and his mom is July 27th. And so
Goodness.
there's a whole bunch of Leo energy going on. My son was actually, it was like, he was on the cusp, right? It was like,
Yeah.
is he gonna be born when he's due? Like was like five
Yeah.
days later, or is he gonna be right there on the cusp? And he was right there on the cusp, July 3rd. Yeah.
My gosh, that's a big house of ego. Oh, Lord. Wow.
Maybe that's why his mom and I haven't been together for a
Right
long
there.
time, yeah.
Whoa, the house full of stars, the
Yeah,
sun.
we could do a whole 'nother hour on that, so
Yes, we could. Wow, imagine that. Well, before we go, I would like for you to, for the parents listening right now that are ready to move from control to connection, what are one or two tools they can begin practicing today to create more calm and emotional safety at home?
again, we could do hours on that.
Mhm,
I would just say the simplest one right now. Don't take relationship for granted. Don't assume someone's connected to you. It goes back to stories we've told here. Your kid, especially if they're young and they don't have that frontal lobe, they can only connect to one thing at a time. And if your
mhm,
kid's been at school all day, they're connected to the teacher right now. If they've been with the other parent for a few hours or for the weekend or whatever, they're feeling connected to them right now. We can't assume, like I always say, I have a green light on my computer that shows me the
mhm,
camera is on. I have a green light over here that shows me the power is plugged on.
mhm,
Imagine your kid has a green light on their forehead and your first job is to get that turned on, which just means get in their face in a friendly way. Get that moment where you just feel connected, because if you don't do that, nothing else you do is gonna work well. And I know how simple that sounds, but it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. All around the world, we take a minute or 2 to get connected with people. And if you just walk into the room and just tell your kid what to do, they have instincts in their body that just say, "No, I'm not
mhm.
gonna." right?
Okay.
And so that's the number one thing I can recommend. Go to our website, transformativeparenting.com. We have free resources, we have cheap resources, and we have comprehensive coaching things that we only have room for, a small amount of people on, right? But we try to make those pathways available. We have a free newsletter every week. We have a YouTube channel with all the top questions that we answer. There's no ads on our, at least right now, we don't put any ads on our stuff. So we have those free resources. I have the book coming out mid-November 2025. You can see a
Mhm.
web page for it on the Transformative Parenting site. Calm and Connected Parenting. I'm trying to provide a low cost, you can do it on your own way of trying to get that right narrative, try to get that more calm present. And then we have a masterclass on the website that is like for people who are interested in done with you kind of coaching. So those are the different pathways, but the number one day-to-day practice is collect before you direct, connect before you move into anything else.
I love that. Well, thank you so much, Todd, for this transformative conversation. It was absolutely awesome. If you're listening, please go and check out Todd's website, his resources, his book, The Calm and Connected Parent. We will have links in the description of this episode. Okay. Um, you can
Well, thank
connect.
you for having me, and thank you so much
Yes.
for what you do. You're a great, bright
Mm.
voice out there talking
Thank
to
you,
people about
Todd.
really important things.
Yes, of course. And we gotta have you back because
I would love to come back. It
you
was great
already teased
conversation.
you teased everybody when you said you can go on for hours, so now you
I
have to
really
commit.
can. I love talking about this stuff, and I love talking to people who have a unique perspective and a unique point of view, and they're bringing truth to people. So, yeah,
Yeah.
we'll talk again. I'm sure we will.
Of course, of course. Thank you all for tuning in. Share this conversation with someone who needs it. And until next time, give yourself permission to live and be great. Okay, let me go ahead and turn this off.